All right. Chapter 7, Tale of Guinerva. Because they are incomplete, 4 tales of Helen of Sunfaced, of Lavid the Fool, and the Working, of the 3 Spurkings, and of Helen Blodod and the Golden Chariot have been omitted. This is the tale of Guinerva as it has come down to us, and to we who reconstruct it, the task is not easy, for the pages are torn in several parts. Great. The tale is told how, back in the bygone days when gods walked the earth, they made the first woman in this manner. They prepared a vessel shaped by the future desires of men, placing into it these things. The gleam of sunlight mixed with the yellowness of ripe corn, this became her hair. The cold, clear dawn dew mixed with the hue of the violet, this became her eyes. The pale radiance from the moonbeam mixed with down from the neck of a swan, this became her brow. The red from the cherry mixed with the color of mayberries, this became her lips. The whiteness of the snowflake mixed with a mayflower's purity, this became her bosom. They took the sparkle from running waters for her smile, and the cooing of a dove for her voice, the heat from the fire to fill her passion, and the edge from the sword to arm her tongue. From the core of a flint worked keenly they made her mind, and from the fall of a snowflake they made her touch. To this they added a blended mixture of extracts from the playful cruelty of the cat, the dancing lightness of the sunbeam's notes, the flutter from the wings of a butterfly, the song of the nightingale, the industriousness of the bee, the gentleness of a mouse, the softness of a rabbit, and the shiver of an aspen tree. If this were a god-made woman, then Guinerva was a product of their hands. But did these gods not try to keep this woman for themselves as being something too good for man? But man, in his brave audacity, stole her, and she became the great woo-maker. Truth is embedded in the old tales for the wise to find and use as they will. When the mother of Guinerva was in child labor, her father, the battle chief Kumwa, was at the festive board, and as was the custom, he called upon the soothsayer to foretell the future. The soothsayer told his lord that the woman child now approaching the vale would grow to be the most beautiful woman in the land, but would be the death of many men, including her own brother, the war chief's only son. These words ate at the heart of Kumwa. He asked the wise soothsayer what should be done to avert disaster, and the crafty one answered that he would seek advice among the stars. Not all soothsayers had a temple of truth in their hearts. It happened that the voice of Helva, son of Kumwa, lived in the ear of the seer, who, when the report was given at mid-morn the following day, it was a lengthy woe foretelling much disturbing to the heart of Kumwa. What was the outcome? The soothsayer spoke long, and Kumwa's heart ached for his only son and for the mother, but his duty was to protect his son and the heir born of his youth, and he could put his daughter to death according to the manner of the times. As a high-born woman's blood could not be spilled among green-growing things, for this would blight the land, and only a simpleton could not be hurt by the deed. Guinerva was given to the battle chief's fool. He was to take her outside the boundary of the land and there drown her, his payment for the deed being the wish-granting urn called Helwed, no small reward. The kind-hearted fool had a little liking for the deed. His heart was heavy, and The kind-hearted fool had little liking for the deed. His heart was heavy, and the ass-back-carried cradle-child was so contently lovely that the fool's load of sadness grew increasingly heavy. So they went on, the kindly fool and the lovely young one, until they came to the great gloomy forest of Caliban's lying beyond Dunmerkel. The fool and his ass load kept on through the forest, for thought he, where else can I go as well here as any other place? It is in keeping with my heart. Deep in the forest, just before the stars opened their eyes, they came upon a small, stream-traversed glade, and there, nestling among the woodweed, was a tumble-down half-house. The fool blew the wayfarer's horn, and there came a small, shy forestman, first cautiously peeping around the doorpost, then timidly approaching. Had it been anyone other than a gaudy garbed fool, the small one would have fled, but these forest farers were taken in and made welcome in the humble hut. Later, the forestman's brothers came back from their foraging, and there was much lively chatter. For among such folk, the fool did not feel out of place. He stayed for 3 days, and it was agreed that the forestman should take the little one from him and take care of her. What else could they do? For forestmen are gentle and kind-hearted. Were they not, they would never have been confined to the forest. What else could the fool do if he could not bring himself to put the little one to death? What better place to leave her? The ugly forestmen raised fair Guinerva with tenderness. They were wise in their way, and because they did not want her to become vain and immodest, or perhaps because they did not want her to discover how different she was, there was nothing in the forest home in which she could see her face. Knowing about the soothsayer's foretelling, they let her think she was ugly too, or was it because they really wished her to be one of them? Did they not know that love closes the eyes to defects? Her only loveliness was unknown to Guinerva. Her playmates were the wild creatures of the forest. Fawns, rabbits, and squirrels played outside her door, and the wise badgers came to protect her at dusk. Wrens and robins were her constant companions. In summer, she bathed in sparkling rill waters and garlanded herself with wild flowers. Wood bells and promosas grew everywhere. In winter, she sang through the berry-bearing glades and gathered fallen kindling wood under the great trees. She slept on a bed of sweet moss under cozy coverlets of fir. She drank the pure stream waters flowing through the cooking place and ate fish and the plentiful forest fruits. Her garments were woven from fine forest flax and soft down. Her mantle was made of white winter fur. Her long, bamp-braided hair took its color from the water marigold. Yet in all her forest-bounded childhood, Guinerva never had a companion of her own age or saw any mortal being other than the forestman. It happened that when the forest maiden had grown to young womanhood, and it was midwinter, huntsmen from the wood castle of the king came into the naked forests, seeking boars for the Yule fest. They came upon the roughed forest home of fair Guinerva, and she, not knowing who or what they were, acted like a frightened wren. They did her no harm, not knowing whether she were mortal or spirit, but went away marveling that the gloomy forest could contain such beauty. Such a tale could not long await the telling, and men argued amongst themselves as to whether a wood spirit had been seen or a mortal. Wood sliffs were known but rarely sighted. It happened that the tale came to the ear of Helva, and he, lacking neither courage nor curiosity, wished to lead men into the forest to hunt the maiden. But she, spirit, be she spirit or mortal. But first, as all wise men do before going on a quest, he sought the advice from the soothsayer. The soothsayer, gazing into the scribble, saw the beauty of Guinerva and knew who she was, and knew, too, that never could Helva venture into the forest, nor would he be safe while Guinerva lived. Now, though the fool had taken the lovely maid to the forest Now, though the fool who had taken the lovely maid to the forest was dead, he had, before dying, unburdened his heart to the mother of Guinerva, and she had kept the secret locked in her breast. Now she decided to go to the forest and warn her daughter, lest any harm befall her, for she doubted not but that there would be a hunting through the tree-fast depths. Making suitable excuses for her absence, she disguised herself as a woodman's wife, and with a young attendant who had been one of the boar hunting party, set out for the forest. The soothsayer with 2 companions also departed for the forest, all being disguised as men of the peddling tribe, and because those with him were experienced in forest ways, it was the soothsayer's party which arrived first at the hutted glade. Guinerva was alone, for the forest men were hewing in the ground, and these being the first strangers she had seen, she took fright, evading them among the trees, from which shelter she nervously peered out. While the soothsayer tried to entice the maiden to tarry, the youngest of the forestmen, having hurt his hand, gave into the glade. The soothsayer's companions seized him, and the maiden's concern overcame her fears. Rushing to his aid, she was taken also, but no harm was done to her, for those with the old man were disarmed by her beauty. He, seeing this, put on the face of guile and acted as would a true peddling man. They bartered the usual wear of peddlers, cloth, brooches, beads, pins, salt, earthware, dyes, knives, sweatmeats, cords, and flints, taking soft pelts and fruit of the ground. Before leaving, the soothsayer gave Guinerva, as a parting gift for a lovely maiden, a sweetly perfumed ointment and a mouth-watering cake, both infused with deadly poison. The cake she left, small and tempting though it was. She wished to share it, but the perfumed ointment she could not resist, and it was a womanly thing. Barely had the forest maiden used it when the forestmen returned. They were early, but heavy rain clouds threatened. Delightedly, the new-bought wares were displayed one by one, but surprised joy diminished to silence as Guinerva grew more and more tired, her head at last falling on to the table. The forestmen picked her up and carried her to the bed-place. As they did so, there was a knocking on the door. It was the mother of Guinerva. Let her in, and the thunderstorm broke full overhead. The speech of the forestmen was not easy on the ears. Their chattering was overcome by the downpour, but the mother of the sleeper knew what had happened. The cake she threw on the fire. The sleeping maid she took in her arms, carrying her out into the thunderstorm. Behind the hut she stripped her, and with moss and mud, rubbing hard, removed the ointmentation. Round and round the glade she walked, the small kilted maid, around and round, never stopping, talking, prodding, lifting, smacking, stumbling together, falling and getting up, slithering on rain-wet moss, bedraggled, muddied, and scratched on tirelessly until final collapse. The forestmen helped the exhausted woman inside, and the elder made them make hot brews for the still sleepy maiden. Her feet were placed in a wood tub of hot water, and she was seated by the fire. Later, the two women were bedded down together, and in the morning... Hold on. Where was I? Bedded down together, and in the morning, the forest maiden woke up well. They broke fast with goat broth, but the mother of Guinerva could not dally over long, nor could the maiden remain with the forestmen, for surely the huntsmen would come again. So a grave place was made, ringed round with stones, and a mound raised, but no maid slept beneath the mayberry bush. Guinerva left the forest, her long fair hair beneath a leathern cap, coarse cloth covering her body. A distant herdsman's home gave her shelter. It happened that the herdsman had two sons, one a hefty, hard-handed, wide-strider, fond of brawling, the other a small-handed fireside dreamer, deft but not overstrong. The first was named Bagat, and the other Darren. It was only days before Bagat was smitten with the beauty of Guinerva, but she, knowing not the ways of men, treated him with friendliness and kindness. He, thinking she was being coy and teasing him after the manner of irresponsible women, tried to take her when she was gathering eggs at the hayrick. She fled to the house, and the good wife and Darren within. Bagat became moody. He sulked the day long and neglected his work, and when once he came on Guinerva alone, he was overcome. He told her that unless she gave herself to him, he would be riding towards the wood castle on the money-making errand. She said, "Then, having no love for me, what ails you?" He rode away. Now, it happened that the soothsayer had looked into the scribe-hole and seen the grave place in the forest, but looking again days later, he saw Guinerva seated on a tussock, carding wool, and he knew she lived. He sent men to dig at the grave place, and it gave up its secret. Forestmen were brought in and put to the mouth-opening test, but they knew nothing of where she was and could say nothing to lessen their suffering. So when Bagat arrived with his tale, the soothsayer knew who he was being described as having hair yellower than broom flowers, skin whiter than driven snow, hands fairer than blossoms of windflowers, eyes brighter than a falcon's bosom, more snowy than a swan's breast, and cheeks redder than mayberries. Men were sent with Bagut to capture such beauty. But beauty had flown, accompanied by Darin, and sought sanctuary with Pentrasil, king of the Hoan, child of the landholdingers, and this was the cause of the bitter war, which made men scarce in the land. For Helva assembled his war bands and entered the lands of Pentrasil, who met him at the place called Rathkelder, even today. We have reconstructed the tale as found, but here some part is missing, though account of the battle remains. The chariot clove through failing ranks, through the drooping spears of the weary spearmen, through the ground-resting shields of the swordsmen, through the gasping forefighters, through the bloody-bodied lines of the axe-swingers, behind the tossing red-eyed heads of the white horses, gold-gilded reins loosely held in one hand, and small bright ash shafted spear firmly held in the other. Golden hair, unbraided, streaming behind her, held back from her face by the golden headguard, her brilliantly brooched cloak flapping like the wings of some heavenly battle bird, Guinerva sped towards the still-standing bodyguard about Helva. No arrow touched her, no slingstone came against her body. She was like a battle goddess. On the slope between reed-bordered river and tree-crowned hill, the war bands of Helva made their last death-awaiting stand. Then it was all over, and the battlefield foragers did their work. So the tale of the delicate forest-raised maiden who became a ridge-driven war goddess, and of Darin who became war-wise in one night, is one oft told in the feast halls.